We welcome you into another episode of Hawks Nest. My name is Owen Crondo, and I'm joined today by Marvin Pewitt Jr. and Justin Trevelyan. And gentlemen, let's start off with baseball. This team is 10-1 on the year. They're scoring 10.5 runs a game. And Marvin, can you give me a strength or a weakness for this team right now?
I would say, Owen and Justin, the strength for this team, I'm going to go with an underrated stat. You know, their on-base percentage. They're getting on base at just over 43% on this season already. You know, and they've been, not only have they been getting on bases by hits, but they've been taking some pitches, getting walked, and they've been providing their teams with many opportunities to score.
With that on-base percentage, like you said, the opportunity to score really shows, and the SEMO Redhawks are in the top 10 in the whole NCAA in multiple categories: runs scored per game, walks per game, home runs per game. So, I mean, with that on-base percentage, the offense can just load up.
And the fact that you mentioned that, Justin, it just shows how good of a team this is, you know. And so going into a weakness, I don't know if this team really has a weakness, but I would say that their batting average is, you know, it's not horrible. They're just hitting under 30% on the season. So that's not horrible, but if they start to hit the ball better, they could definitely continue to make their argument as a top-tier team in NCAA Division I baseball.
I definitely agree. It was really tough for me to also find a weakness. Only thing I would say is maybe the competition hasn't been great. You know, when you get into the OVC conference, those games are going to be tough. Obviously, conference games are tougher, and SEMO is the top dog, so everybody's going to want to bring their best game against them.
Yeah, moving on to softball, that team is defending back-to-back OVC champs. You mentioned that baseball won the OVC last year and won the tournament, but softball is currently sitting at 9-7 on the year. So, they sit 5th overall record-wise in the OVC, even though conference play has not started yet. But that's coming up soon here. Next weekend, once we get back from spring break, softball will be at home to open the OVC season. So is it overreaction to think that they're not going to defend their back-to-back titles?
I would say that, yes, that would be an overreaction, because if you look at their 7 losses, each of those losses are on days where they played two games, one or more games, 2 games. So, when you look at that, obviously they're going to be worn out after one game. The pitchers are going to be worn out, batters. So if you think about it like that, and they have some really tough competition coming up, then that's just going to help them be prepared to dominate in the OVC.
You know, Justin and Owen, they haven't even started OVC play yet, you know, so I think it is an overreaction also. And with Justin, you know, the OVC is a team that our softball team has dominated for the past 2 years. They're 55-18 in the OVC and throughout the past 2 years. You know, they made the automatic bid to the tournament almost 2 years ago. And even though they didn't win last year's OVC championship, you know, they've been dominating this league. So I think it is overreaction.
And now moving on to basketball, the men's team just finished up with a loss to Murray State in the Ohio Valley Conference Tournament. But they finished 4th in the OVC. So looking at it, where do you think they'll finish next year and why?
Next year, I would look at them finishing in the top 3 again, somewhere in there. You know, you look at those teams leaving the OVC, like we mentioned last week, Murray State and Belmont. So really, your only competition, not only competition, but your main competition is going to be Morehead State next year. So, if you can steal a game from them, as SEMO did this past season, I think you're right there in the top 3 conversation.
And that you mentioned Morehead State, Justin, you know, SEMO has already showed that they can hang with them. And even though they lost to Morehead State, you know, SEMO have been showing that they can hang with them and things like that. And, you know, Murray State and Belmont is leaving, so the competition is lessening. So I have them being at number 1, you know, since the competition is not too good, and most of the teams look like they're staying. And nobody hasn't really said that they're leaving, except maybe 1 or 2 or 3 guys, you know. So if they have the opportunity to continue to oversee as experienced vets.
Yeah, you made a really good point there. I have them as number 1 as well. Morehead State, as you mentioned, is a team that SEMO hung with this year. They lost to them at home in overtime by 1 point, and then they went on the road and beat them. So when you look at that, this is a good team, and I think they are going to finish 1st in the OVC. Now, moving on to women's basketball, this is a team that finished 9th in the OVC this year out of 10 teams and missed a tournament for the first time in 7 years under Coach Rika Patterson. Where do you guys think they finished and why?
Man, this is going to be a long shot, but I'm gonna go with first two again for the women's basketball team. You know, they had a disappointing season last season. It was very rough for them. It was unlike the CMO's women's basketball team that I've seen since I've been here since 2019. You know, they earned an automatic bid to the NCAA Division I tournament last year. I mean, almost 2 years ago, but COVID ruined that. You know, but they are a young team, and they got the experience that they